This is ego-utilitarianism, and this is the relative theory of value for dummies, part 2. In this presentation, I'll just be wrapping up a quick summary of the relative theory of value. In the first part, I presented one form of the relative theory of value. I call that the ex ante, or before consumption form. And in this presentation, I'll just present an alternate form, which I call the ex post or after consumption form of the relative value of a good. It just helps someone who's trying to understand this. It gives another way to look at things, to fortify understanding. Okay, so looking back at the relative theory of value for dummies part 1, I presented this function, or this definition of the relative value of a good. I call it the ex ante or before consumption form, which is the R function, which depends on the inherent properties of a particular good and the state of the consumer. You know, his goals, abilities, and external conditions. So now I want to present an alternate way to look at the relative value of a good, or what I call the ex post or after consumption form, which equals the sum of all benefits after consumption. So you can see that this is merely consequential, right? It's what happens after he consumes the good. You can actually see the events and what happens as far as benefit to the consumer is throughout time. So it is easier to determine the relative value of a good using this method or function. The only disadvantage to the ex post method is that the consumer is hoping to determine relative value before consumption in order to compare it to costs and opportunity costs of consuming other goods, because they're concerned with profit, right? The only value that the ex post relative value provides is the information it generates in helping someone make future decisions. So, like, if you mess up, or if you accidentally generate a loss instead of profit, or you can compare two outcomes, like when you consume this good one time and you consume another good for the same purpose at another time. You can kind of use the information to help you make a future similar decision. So both forms of the relative value of the good are essentially the same. They're equivalent. The ex ante form is a mechanical prediction of the ex post form. In other words, given the inherent properties of the good and the conditions of the consumer, one could perfectly predict the benefits that follow consumption. And here's where I'm going to segue into my actual personal philosophy. It's self-name. It's not. I came up with the name ego-utilitarianism. So I asked, benefits in terms of what? Benefits is not a reference to mere monetary benefit. Ego-utilitarianism says the only benefit of concern should be in terms of self-existence. And so self isn't limited to the physical body for ego-utilitarianism. And I have a specific, very abstract definition of self. Self is all the criteria that define you. It is actually your definition. And maybe I'll end it there. Maybe leaving you with questions. So this is just a segue into another video. I'll be talking about self-interest and ego-utilitarianism. So of which relative value of a good is a pillar of. So I'm gonna rely on my theory of relative value, not only for a good but also for action in terms of morality for an actor, right? So relative value in general is very important to the ego utilitarianism philosophy, and I'll go and another pillar of ego utilitarianism is a definition I call self, because the morality of ego utilitarianism depends on self-interest or self-existence, perpetuation of oneself, and that's not one's physical body, but it's your definition. Anything that defines you is part of yourself. And I'll get into that in another presentation. Thank you for watching this video. Like, comment, subscribe, criticize if you see anything wrong here, this is pretty much the first draft of formalizing my philosophy. So I'd appreciate any criticisms, constructive but please be substantial. I mean, I appreciate, non-substantial criticisms like a typo or something. But if you see something inherently wrong with the philosophy, something that will cause me to rework the whole thing, feel free to try to criticize me, and I'll respond to the comments below. Thank you. This has been ego utilitarianism, and look out for my future videos on ego utilitarianism and self-interest or self-existence.